You are standing at an airport kiosk that is dark. The screen that was supposed to speed you through customs in under 3 minutes is off. The global entry lanes that you paid for, applied for, waited months to get approved for, are not operating. And the reason has nothing to do with your application, your background check, or anything you did. The reason is that the United States Department of Homeland Security is now 20 days into a partial shutdown. And as of March 5, 2026, there is no resolution in sight. No deal, no continuing resolution, no agreement, just a funding impasse in Washington, D.C. that is quietly dismantling services that millions of immigrants, travelers, and visa holders depend on every single day. And global entry is just the beginning of what we need to talk about today. Because buried underneath the headline about airport kiosks going dark, there is a staffing crisis at USCIS that could delay your biometrics appointment by weeks or months. There is a FEMA operating under a life-saving only mandate, which tells you exactly how thin the resources inside this department have been stretched. And there is a political standoff in the Senate that has turned your immigration timeline into collateral damage in a fight over ICE accountability following fatal shootings in Minnesota. This is the DHS Shutdown update for March 5, 2026. And if you have any pending immigration application, any scheduled appointment, any travel plan that depends on federal immigration services functioning normally, you need to understand exactly what is happening and what it means for your specific situation. While social media is cycling through the same 3 talking points about this shutdown, we are looking at the official service announcements, the agency communications, and the political timeline that will determine when or whether any of this gets resolved. Remember, I am an analyst walking you through the system. This is educational content, not legal advice. Always consult a licensed immigration attorney for guidance specific to your case. But understanding the landscape is the first step toward protecting yourself within it. So let's build that understanding right now. Let's start with global entry, because this is the service affecting the largest number of people in the most immediate and visible way. Global entry is a customs and border protection program. It allows pre-approved, low-risk travelers to move through customs at participating U.S. airports using automated kiosks, skipping the standard passport control lines. For frequent travelers, for visa holders who cross borders regularly for work or family, for immigrants who travel internationally and return to the United States often, global entry is not a luxury. It is a practical tool that saves hours and reduces the stress of every international arrival. As of right now, those kiosks are dark at participating airports. The program is officially suspended until federal funding is restored. Now here's the detail that most people covering this story are glossing over. This is not just an inconvenience for people who already have global entry. It also means that people whose global entry applications were pending, people who went through the background check process, paid the application fee, and were waiting for their enrollment appointment at a trusted traveler enrollment center, are now in limbo. Those appointments are not being scheduled. Those approvals are sitting in a processing queue that is not moving. And there is no official timeline for when normal operations will resume, because that timeline depends entirely on a funding agreement that Washington has not been able to reach. But stay with me, because the global entry suspension, as frustrating as it is, may not be the most serious consequence of this shutdown for the immigrant community. Let's talk about what is happening inside USCIS right now. United States Citizenship and Immigration Services operates, unlike many federal agencies, primarily on application fees rather than direct congressional appropriations. That structural fact has historically given USCIS some insulation from government shutdowns. But the key word there is some, because while USCIS is not fully shuttered the way some other agencies are, the staffing crisis bleeding through the broader DHS shutdown is creating real and measurable disruption to operations. And the area where that disruption is most acute right now is biometrics. Biometrics appointments, the process where applicants go to an application support center to have their fingerprints taken, their photograph captured, and their identity verified, are a required step in almost every significant immigration benefit application. Green Card applications, naturalization applications, work permit renewals, travel document requests. You cannot move your case forward without completing this step. It is not optional. It is not something you can skip or defer indefinitely. It is a mandatory checkpoint. And right now, application support centers across the country are running with reduced staffing. The downstream effect of that staffing scarcity is appointment delays. Cases that would normally see a biometrics appointment scheduled within a few weeks are now facing waits that could stretch significantly longer. For applicants whose work permits are expiring, whose travel documents are time-sensitive, whose entire ability to remain legally authorized to work in this country depends on that application moving forward, a biometrics delay is not a minor bureaucratic inconvenience. It is a direct threat to their legal status and their livelihood. Most applicants don't realize that a biometrics delay caused by agency staffing issues can create a cascade of problems that extends far beyond the appointment itself. Here is what that cascade looks like in practice. Your biometrics appointment is delayed by 6 weeks due to ASC staffing shortages. Your case cannot advance without biometrics completion. Your current work permit expires during those 6 weeks. You may lose your job because your employer cannot verify your continued work authorization. You may lose your health insurance. You may lose your housing if your income disappears. And none of that happened because of anything you did wrong. It happened because a funding fight in the Senate has left the agency processing your application without enough staff to keep up with its caseload. Let's look at the facts, not the fear, and let's talk about what is actually driving this shutdown and why it matters to understand the politics. The partial DHS shutdown is now in its 20th day. The core impasse is this. Senate Democrats are blocking the passage of a DHS funding bill until new oversight restrictions are placed on immigration and customs enforcement. This push for restrictions followed a series of fatal incidents in Minnesota involving ICE operations that became a major flashpoint in the ongoing national debate over immigration enforcement conduct. Senate Democrats have taken the position that they will not authorize continued DHS funding without accountability measures attached. The Republican-led House and the current administration have rejected those conditions. And so the funding has not moved. And every day it does not move. The operational disruptions inside DHS deepen. Here is where it gets complicated. And this is the part that matters most for understanding the timeline. Shutdown negotiations do not follow a predictable schedule. There is no legal deadline forcing a resolution by a specific date. The pressure to reach a deal comes from the accumulating weight of disrupted services, political optics, and public pressure. 20 days in, that pressure is building. But building pressure does not guarantee a quick resolution. Some shutdowns have lasted days, some have lasted weeks. The longest shutdown in American history lasted 35 days. We are at 20 and counting. What that means for you practically is that you cannot plan around an assumed resolution date. You have to plan around the disruption as it currently exists, while building in contingencies for it lasting longer. And then there is FEMA. The Federal Emergency Management Agency operating under a life-saving only mandate is a signal worth paying close attention to. When an agency that exists to respond to disasters, to coordinate emergency relief, to support communities in crisis, is officially limiting itself to only the most critical life-threatening operations, it tells you something about the depth of the resource constraint inside the broader department. It means that the funding gap is not a surface-level administrative inconvenience. It is penetrating into the operational core of agencies that millions of people depend on in their most vulnerable moments. And while FEMA's mandate may feel removed from your immigration case, it is part of the same systemic picture. A department that is stretched this thin across all of its functions is a department where your case, your appointment, your application is competing for attention and resources in a way it simply was not 60 days ago. 60 days. Let me ground all of this in a real situation. Think about a woman. Let's call her Priya. She is a skilled worker on an H-1B visa. Her employer filed for her green card 2 years ago, and her case has been moving through the process. Her most recent work permit is set to expire in 6 weeks. She received a biometrics appointment notice 3 months ago for a date that fell in the middle of this shutdown period. That appointment has now been rescheduled with no confirmed new date provided. Her attorney has filed an inquiry with USCIS, but response times on inquiries are also stretched due to staffing issues. Priya is 6 weeks away from a potential gap in her work authorization through absolutely no fault of her own, because the agency processing her renewal cannot staff its appointment centers adequately during a funding shutdown that she has no power to resolve. Priya's situation is playing out in thousands of variations across the country right now, and the response to it is not panic. The response is precision. knowing exactly what to do in exactly what order to protect yourself as much as the system allows. Here are your 3 steps, and these are urgent. The first step is to check every pending application you have and identify any upcoming deadlines that a biometrics delay could threaten. Specifically, if you have a work permit expiring within the next 60 to 90 days and a renewal application pending, contact your immigration attorney this week to discuss whether an emergency expedite request to USCIS is appropriate for your situation. USCIS does have a formal expedite criteria process. It is not guaranteed, but it exists, and an attorney can evaluate whether your circumstances meet the threshold. Do not wait until your permit has already expired to have this conversation. The second step is to document everything related to any appointment that has been canceled, rescheduled, or delayed during this shutdown period. Keep every email, every notice, every rescheduling confirmation you receive from USCIS or any application support center. If your case is ever questioned, if a gap in your status is ever scrutinized, having a documented paper trail showing that the delay was caused by a federal agency shutdown and not by any failure on your part is critical evidence in your favor. The third step is to suspend any non-essential international travel plans until global entry operations are confirmed restored, and you have verified that your specific trusted traveler status is active and functional. If you must travel internationally during this period, build significant extra time into your return arrival, because processing through standard customs lanes without global entry will take substantially longer, particularly at high-traffic airports. And if your visa has a must-enter-by date that is approaching, speak with an attorney before you travel, not after. Here is the truth about this moment. The DHS shutdown is a political crisis, but it is landing as a personal crisis for hundreds of thousands of immigrants and visa holders who had nothing to do with the disagreements in Washington that caused it. The families waiting on green card approvals, the workers whose employment authorization is hanging on a delayed biometrics appointment, the travelers whose trusted traveler status has gone dark, none of them voted for this impasse. None of them caused it, but all of them are absorbing its consequences. And the gap between what is happening inside these agencies and what the affected community knows about it is where the real damage accumulates. Most people will not find out that their biometrics appointment center is understaffed until they show up and face a rescheduling notice. Most people will not know that their work permit timeline is at risk until it is almost too late to do anything about it. That gap is what this channel exists to close. Immigration in 2026 is not a stable system running on autopilot. It is a system under active strain from multiple directions simultaneously. A shutdown here, a court ruling there, a policy change issued on a Tuesday that reshapes your options by Wednesday. The people who navigate this environment successfully are not the people who assume things will work out. They are the people who stay informed, stay organized, and stay connected to trusted sources that are reading the actual documents so they can act before the problem arrives instead of after. If this video helped you understand something that was unclear, if it gave you one concrete action you can take to protect your case or your family, please subscribe to this channel right now and turn on your notifications. Because the next development in this shutdown, the next service suspension, the next policy update, it will not wait for you to find it. You need a source that brings it to you, verified, translated into plain language, and focused entirely on what it means for your life. Stay informed, stay documented, and do not let Washington's impasse become your personal crisis without a plan.